not to quote Stained, but it's been a while. And the Rob and Eritrea show is back. Welcome back to Diabetics Doing Things, telling the amazing stories of people with diabetes from all over the world, from all over Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I'm Rob Howe.
I think I'm Eritrea Mussa. Maybe I'm a hologram.
Not
We'll
sure.
never know on this pod if this is me or not. I could just be
The big
AI gen.
reveal is that I created Eritrea, and I just been chat GPTing her in a
I am an
hologram all
industry
these years.
cat.
I like that conspiracy.
So
I like that
interesting. I can
conspiracy.
see how people would be like, she just came out of nowhere. But anyway.
So let's talk a little bit about diabetes check-in. Just to get the episode started, we're recording this in May. It's going to probably go live in June. We got some awesome Pride interviews scheduled. So excited to share those with you guys and share perspectives from our LGBTQ plus community in the diabetes space. How are you doing? How's your diabetes? Still got it?
Forever. It's really weird. This year I haven't had to do the letter of medical necessity. Usually every year my doctor has to like reaffirm that I have diabetes. So I think I've only seen her once this year. I've been kind of like, I can do this all by myself.
Where does that like letter? Because I also like with your insurance, like, you got to go to your endo to like minimum once a year to get your prescriptions renewed. Where does that rank for you on like the most annoying things about diabetes, like having to justify that you still have this incurable disease?
It's up there because also my doctor, which is what makes me want to fire her. I don't care. I'll say that with my whole chest. That's why I haven't gone. She charges $25. Girl, why do I have to pay you $25 to do your job? That's like if my job was like, hey, here's an extra $7 for pressing post. Like this in the job description. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, I guess we could, just diabetes annoyances. Like right now, my insurance, I have commercial insurance and I pay for it. And I pay for not only mine, but all my employees. Last year, we covered and talked a lot about the Senate hearings where the manufacturers went and they talked about like the costs are going to go down, which I don't know. I need more information on because I feel like because they did that, insurances stopped covering certain insulins. And so now people who have commercial insurance and were used to getting their insulin covered, it's now not covered, which is causing a lot of problems. Anyway, I'm using a manufacturer coupon for my Fiasp, and so it's costing
Yes, you
me.
finally got it after me asking for a million years. You were like, no, 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 but you finally got it.
I finally did, but I had to get the pharmacy to just use the coupon. So I pay $99 for my monthly prescription.
Wow.
Which is, comes down to like $35 a vial. Like, so ultimately, like that's manageable. I don't like it because like, why do I have the insurance if it's not going to be covered? My multiple prior authorization requests were denied and the appeals were denied, despite having a really good outcome from my A1C, like super good improvements, time and range, all that stuff, like really good from my last endo appointment, which I think we talked about before because of the system I'm on and like the management, like I don't really have to do that much. And like, that's given me the ability to like manage all the other stuff in my life. And to see also alongside that, my metrics getting better was like a huge relief to me and like felt really good. So yeah, like I feel good about my management right now, but like the pathway that it's taking to get there, it's expensive, man. And for me to be able to say that, like I am one of the most over-resourced people with diabetes. Like I know thousands of people across the world, like no matter where I am in the world, I could find a way to get either community support or somebody to help me figure out like a way to get supplies or insulin. So for me to have a bunch of obstacles to get insulin, I just think of someone who doesn't have that and how much more difficult it will be for them. And that makes me feel bad, man. That it really does. Like, cause I know where to go. I know the pathways. I know that there's a pharmaceutical manufacturer coupon that I can use to get me by.
Speak English. You know how the system works. I think it's so one, just because it's manageable doesn't mean that it's right or that it's fair.
Sure,
Insulin,
absolutely. Absolutely.
insulin is a human right. Like the fact that you're having to go leaps and bounds to get it is trash. That sucks. Especially as Americans. Like, what are we paying for? What am I paying for? Number two, I will die on the hill that we need an investigative episode. I don't think it's a hill I need to die on. I think it's a hill you're on with me of where is this $25 insulin? At this point, I need to go full serial, not killer the first podcast, but like fully investigate like where is it at, bro? Because you're not the first. My friend, shout out to her, Valeria, social media manager over the diabetes link. She texted me this week and was like asking me about Fiasp and like do I use it because they've stopped covering what she was on before, and like that's why? Like, why are we just switching up people's care just willy-nilly? What is the thought process behind this?
That's the question that I want answered as well, is like, this thing that was seemingly good has actually caused a lot more barriers and obstacles for people who didn't have some of those before. So like, again, like people with commercial insurance like myself, private insurance, like
I mean, is it
we
that $25 insulin? Like, do we know that for a fact, or are we speculating?
highly speculative at this point for me. Like I have not, but again, my experience is not everyone's. I have not experienced it. We need to find somebody on Medicaid, Medicare who's getting it, like just to have that side of the story. At the same time, is it a minority of people? That would be my guess. That by and large, the patient population in the United States is not experiencing a decreased cost of their insulin. And in fact, because of what we're talking about, some of the insurance companies are saying, well, hey, the manufacturers have discounted these, so we're not going to offer, patient assistance or, cover our part of it because we don't have to. So because it's cheap, so
Do
we're not
you
going
get
to do that.
your full script? So I'm on Novolog. I've had diabetes so long, you forget what you're on, bro. When I go to the pharmacy, I'm supposed to get like 6 vials. They always only give me one at a time. And there's always like a shortage. And they're like, oh, well, try it at this pharmacy. And I'm like, okay. Like, I'm not mad at y'all, Walgreens. I get it. What is going on? Do we not have enough insulin? Which is like, do I need to be prepared? Like, where's that insulin recipe? Do you have it on hand, Rob? Because we might need it. Like,
Hey, we're coming up with a lot of to-do lists items for ourselves here, but I think to your point, there are a lot of extra things. Like you may not be able to get your full prescription covered. Like some of that is like 90 days versus 30 days. We're working on sourcing health insurance experts to like come and break this stuff down for us. So because we are just, podcasters and patients here, we need experience from people who actually do this. But your doctor writes you a 90-day prescription. You take it to some pharmacies, and I think this again depends on which pharmacy you use. Like Walgreens, I also use. So Tracy
shout out.
Brown, Chief Patient Officer, please come sponsor the pod. But
Walgreens.
but at the same time, you have to use like a mail order pharmacy, to get like the 90-day supply and that type of thing. And there's also shipping costs associated with those types of things. So it's never as simple as like buying something on Amazon. That's kind of the for-profit healthcare, crux, is that it's supposed to make it so much better. And what most people unfortunately experience is that it makes it dramatically worse. We're talking about like almost 10 grand in annual cost to manage diabetes outside of, not including like
Okay,
insurance
outside
costs and
of
things
if
like
you
that.
have complications, like, okay, the other day I got a bill from the retina people, $375. $375, girl. And then I didn't pay it because medical billing, right? I was like, fuck you guys. I'll pay when I have to come again.
Y'all can
So I
wait.
called to make an appointment and they're like, your account is grayed out. Like you can't. So like it becomes a barrier to access of care, right? So then I had to pay it, which alhamdulillah, I had the money to pay it. Like here, take my car, take my money. But then also like if you need backup syringes, like if you want to get a sharps container, alcohol swab. Like, I don't think we're thinking about like we are so blessed to not just have access to resources, like you said, like being some of the most resourceful people in diabetes, but just having access to basic diabetes care and technology. You and I have the most advanced technology in the game. Is this just the truth? Like we're very lucky. So for other people who are just like trying to survive, it sounds like this is impossible. Like
Yeah, and I think that is again continuing to focus on getting outside of ourselves, back to the core of the podcast. Help one person. Sometimes it's ourselves. We got to advocate for ourselves. We're going to talk a little bit about that with your creator journey as you're growing as a creator, how to advocate for yourselves in certain situations, and we're going to have a little fun game with that later on in the podcast.
but
But
living
again,
with
it's
diabetes in general is like what we're I think trying to hit here, which is that like there's all these facets, right? So like one of them being insurance, whether you have it or you don't. And I think I've also mentioned before how like when I was broke, because I don't like to admit that, but there was a time in my life I was poor and I was signed up for the Parkland healthcare program and like I was able to get all of my supplies for $5. And sometimes my mom has said to me before, it's weird how this country sometimes will, and I will say this country, America, I'm talking to us, will fault you sometimes for being more successful. It's like, oh, because you have a job, pay $100 for your insulin instead of like, oh, because you don't work. Here's like, I don't, it's just this weird, what's the word that you love so much? Dichotomy. Like, it's this weird thing.
Well, I think it brings up real challenges of living in America that a lot of people who are in that middle class feel very underrepresented or forgotten. Is like it's hard. It's harder than ever in America to
Yeah,
get an apartment, to buy a house, to finance a car. And many people came to America under the guise 100 years ago, 75 years ago, of a land of opportunity, a land where they could finance a home, they could raise a family on one income. I think we've just, for a lot of different reasons, especially kind of really magnified over the last 10, 12 years, is that is just not true for the vast majority of Americans, especially ones living in major cities. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done here at home. And I think that's why so many people feel so passionately about the type of money that leaves our borders and goes to other places to finance things like war and
killing
bombs
kids.
and tanks. And also, in some cases, like defending people who need help as well. But that money could also be going into programs that help people here who are having a really tough day to day, whether they have diabetes or not. And I think, when we talk about communities of color who are experience a lot of challenges, like the number of primary care facilities in neighborhoods like directly affects people's lifespan. And the zip code that you're born in is like the most indicative of health span and lifespan almost than any other thing in the United States, because of district redlining and things like that have taken place over many years. And also we had a great conversation with Vivian Nevada talking about the number of endocrinologists in like four
Uganda.
African sub-Saharan African countries, like 8 total endocrinologists in 4
No, she said
countries.
4 in Uganda total. She said the amount of endocrinologists in Uganda, I'll never forget. She said they fit in a small SUV or like a small sedan. I was like,
Unbelievable,
whoa.
unbelievable. And like we have that problem
Imagine
here in the
in
United
Wyoming.
States too, but we have like 8,000 endocrinologists. Like
So why,
so,
like in Wyoming, there's only 3 of them. Like we talked to Casey, shout out to him, my boy, Casey Turrell. I think about him all the time. There's only 3 in Wyoming. He used to have to drive 7 hours. So like even these problems that exist overseas, I care about them a lot as the like founder of the DHAC and a person whose heart goes out so much like outside of myself. But they're also happening here. Like when you said just now, even like people going to help people. Yeah, like we do that. But then the people we send to help people, we abandon them because those are our veterans. Like it's
yeah,
just so
yeah.
like, oh God, I'm exhausted. Like even talking about it is exhausting. I'm sure listening to it, friends and listeners, is also exhausting, not fun at all.
I think all that to say, like if you're feeling like things are heavy, if you're feeling like it's been harder to manage your entire life than it's ever been, I don't think you're alone in that. And that I don't have the fix for. But what I do want to focus on a little bit for today's interview or today's conversation is the free and sort of universal healthy habit opportunities that are for people, not only people with diabetes, but just people in general, because diabetes is a metabolic disease, and the habits that we have outside of the pharmacology, outside of the technology, outside of counting our carbs and like following that, actually really have a huge dramatic impact. And I think a lot of the guests that we have on the podcast talk about some of those things. We've done the mental health series. We've talked about physical health with multiple people. We've talked about the importance of sleep, the importance of community and relationships. And those are kind of available. But again, we all have a ridiculous amount of to-do lists items in our lives. We've never been in more demand from our friends, our family, our coworkers. We're on our phones a lot. That has a disproportionate effect on our well-being. So I want to just talk a little bit about helping yourself to build little changes that can have a big difference over time. Something that I talk about in my personal life a lot is just incremental progress, the idea of returning to these small little changes that can have big sweeping impacts for you over a long period of time. And you guys laugh at me and we joke about my cold plunges, and we joke
Oh
about
yeah, doing those? I
every
mean, you
dang week.
finally, sorry parents, but you finally shut the fuck up about it. So I was just like, he must have stopped.
I
Um,
actually think about that every time I do it because I don't talk about it as much anymore. It's like people
thank
probably think
you anyway.
I've lost habit or I've lost, but I'm in it all the time. It's the
Hey,
summertime
if
in
you
Texas,
want to
which
make
is the main
rage
reason.
bait, like do pod. If you want to make rage bait, keep your cold plunge. First of all, I'm glad that it's a pillar of like you're taking care of self and making sure your mental health and you are in a place that you want to be. And if that's something that puts you in that space, that's amazing. I think the rest of us plebeians, me, I'm like I can never do that shit. Or maybe I think I couldn't, and that's why it's like a projection of my self shame. That's why I'm like, shut up, I don't want to hear about this. But
Yeah. I understand.
rage
I
bait.
understand seeing like positive things that are supposed to be positive and like them reflecting negative on you. Of course. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. But I think also you were doing, and maybe one day that episode will see air, and it'll be part of our Rob and Eritrea lore. But we did record another episode that is hidden, and you guys might never see it. But in it, we talked about how you were going for walks because you live close to the Arboretum. Are you still doing that? I know you're not an early morning person, which was like the whole point of that, was that like you are a sleepy guy.
Yeah, I've been overreaching physically, like really pushing hard. Hoop Fest is right around the corner. That's number one on my New Year's resolutions was to win Hoop Fest 2024. So I've
Okay.
been pushing myself physically. So I needed more sleep. It's that loop of like when you're really going hard, you got to rest, you got to recover, or
Mhm.
else you'll really burn out. And I am prone to going too hard and not, giving myself rest. But I'm also aging, so I've got to do that. But I am going on
You
walks.
want me to dunk this year, right? We got to get the Rob Howe dunk birthday video, so we're
Yeah.
prepping.
Well, part of that too is like I'm dunking in games again, like a lot. So like which is fun. And there were times where I didn't know that was going to happen for me again. But something I've also become more comfortable with lately is the idea that like you were talking about with cold plunges and your response to it, like good for you, but that's not for me, is that I am just not relatable, which is fine.
Yeah,
I
I don't
think
know how
that
you guys are popular. Somebody was telling me you're just like you're so like unattainable.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not in control of that. I think that's where, I spend a lot of time studying things and like thinking and trying to my love language and is trying to improve and trying to be a good steward. And I think I've had this like really ever since I was young. And I think my parents instilled this in me is like, you have to make the most of the time that you're given. Shout out to Gandalf saying that to Frodo in Lord of the Rings, right? It's like people don't want that responsibility. Most people who get a lot of responsibility like feel like they shouldn't have it or wish that someone else had done it. But like that is the dichotomy of leadership, and it's a tough
Are
thing
you
to
Gandalf
do.
or are you Spider-Man? I think it's more Spider-Man. Like I think
That too,
that
like with great power comes great responsibility, right?
I
Shout out
think
Uncle Ben. Did you guys know that Uncle Ben dies, and that's why Spider-Man has to
you're
turn
such a
into.
wow. Spoiler, trigger warning to all of our listeners. No, but you have, since I've met you, been very aware of the place where you're at and how that could maybe make you a role model to others. So when I say how did you get so popular, I say that jokingly because being that for people when I know that sometimes there's a lot of maybe darkness that you think I don't see whatever, like your own struggles, your own stuff you're going through can be a way for you to take care of yourself as a person with diabetes in general and also help other people take care of themselves. And that's a big responsibility that you take on because you have power. Look at that. I put a bow on that. Girl.
Yeah, well, I think too, what are we trying to prioritize? And I think for me, when I had that sitting in that chair in Colombia, when my pump fell out of my pocket, and it's like, well, who do I help? How do we help people? Oh, well, maybe I could help people with diabetes. What is that for me? It comes down to kind of living well with diabetes and just letting people know that that's possible. But then again, making sure that you address both sides of things where it's like, yes, that's possible. Does it mean you're going to be living well with diabetes every single day? Like, no. But in the aggregate, you zoom out and you're like, okay, well, I'm having more good days than bad days. Or when I do these things that I know are good for me, things work out better. So I can try to put more effort into doing those things. And in return, I know I'm going to get something back. So back to your question about the walks. Yeah, I'm going on walks every Monday. My business partner and I start our week walking together so we can talk and get outside, touch a little grass. And that helps me get into the rhythm of the week and connect with him one on one, which I think is helpful for both of us. So again, those have to be intentionally slow. I'm not trying to, walk 10 miles. I'm not trying to make this an achievement. I'm trying to check in. And it's interesting. We talked about all these different tools over the years. We did the Tools of Type 1 series before you came on the team.
Yeah.
But revisiting that kind of framework recently, because I got to speak to a support group who discovered us through Tools of Type 1s and then went and kind of saw the opportunity for themselves to be the change. And now, for almost 4 years now, they have met once a month as a group, mostly Canadian folks, and they connect with each other and they share information and encouragement and community. And so I got to go speak to them last week. And it really reminded me that some of these little things that you and I, because we're so close to them all the time, maybe take for granted, could still
Yes.
be the like breakthrough information that somebody needs, or they're discovering it for the first time and seeing that mirror of what their life with diabetes could be, or seeing somebody else admit that they're struggling with something and feeling like it's a little bit more normal. That's where I come down to like the pillars, to use your word, of diabetes care that are free, accessible, and really non-technology or pharmacological. And their physical health, mental health, and community are the big three.
Yeah.
And I think then that kind of extends into, all right, well, how, if those are sort of the entry points for living well with diabetes, what is the modern day Western sort of living well life is, career, relationships, family, travel, maybe flexibility, freedom. Like those are what I think people being able to do whatever they want to do with diabetes, a goal for me to like make sure that people know that they have access to. I want us to remember that while the world feels out of control or spiraling or things that are outside of our own control that we can't influence, that there are things that we can influence to make our right now a little bit better. And for me, that's really simple exercise. It's community, not only but community through exercise, like being a teammate, being a team member. So like, my basketball buddies, like we don't ever talk about, my wife jokes, she's like, oh, what do you know about each other? It's like, well, we don't ever really talk about anything other than
You're a
basketball.
man. You guys
It's
are
just
men.
classic guy stuff. I don't know, guys being dudes, dudes rock. But
Trash.
yeah, except when we don't. But, again, control what you can control. And, that community aspect. And then, the mental health aspect, that could be as simple as, we did our mindfulness thing. And I'd love to talk about this with you because we had our little comment banter on social media. But meditation and mindfulness is uncomfortable and it's hard and it feels weird because it's billed as this like cure all. It's like CBD was like 5 years ago, where everybody's like, just take CBD, whatever you got, it'll make you better.
I love yourself right now. If you Google Rob Howe and CBD, stuff comes up. But anyways,
Yeah, I know, but yes, people could do hard things, but actually, like hard things are tough to do. Like
yeah,
like we don't have to like feel good. Like if you feel bad about doing hard things, like that's so normal. And like if you're sitting down to meditate for the first time, or like you're being led into meditation and you're not feeling like this is uncomfortable, this person is a little bit woo woo, a little bit strange. I don't really know if I'm doing it right. Like that's the most normal thing of all time. And so that's why I loved your response and perspective in that episode, because it's such a mirror for how things get started. Like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I remember judging myself so hard for not being able to levitate my body off the ground the first time I was meditating, to like not.
this man said I want to astro project.
Yeah, like no, I wanted to be like the last airbender. I wanted to be like a monk in Nepal and be like, wow, I'm living forever. I tapped into the source. Like none of that happened ever. And I'm lucky even today if I'm able to count 10 breaths without some other intrusive thought coming across my mind. And sometimes I make it 3 breaths and then I go back to 1. And I may never make it past 3, but if I do 5 sets of 3, that's 15 breaths and like I can move on. So
Okay.
I would just say, like, especially when we're talking about doing hard things, whether it's going for a walk or whether it's challenging yourself in your career or your relationship or with mindfulness or meditation or some sort of good habit, whether it's writing or drawing or creating, if you don't knock it out of the park right away on the first try, I'm here to tell you that I am right there with you, that never happened for me and that it's hard and it's frustrating. And the only thing that I can tell you is that I believe that those efforts are worthwhile and that they do make you better in the long term. And that at the very least, they'll lead you to some place that you wouldn't have found if you hadn't have put that effort in.
For sure. Even if it's a place that maybe you don't want to go. And I think that's what I was going to say when we were talking about meditation being uncomfortable, because I've gone on a lot of journeys in my life. I've tried lots of things. I'm a
70,
diabetic.
75 hard.
And I'm going to come back to that. So there's a difference in something being uncomfortable because it's hard to do it, and something being not just uncomfortable, but like painful and harmful to you because it doesn't necessarily work for you. I would say though, to try it, right? Like maybe I talk in a way that seems like I do, but I try not to give up on something before I even start it, which is it's a mentality thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
being neurodivergent or not, like on the spectrum or not, ADHD or not, I'm still going to show up and try and like try to get through that first or even 3 or 5 sessions. Like I'm someone who's like try something 3 times before I give up. I'm a bit tenacious that way. So I think that as a society, part of our problem is that we are blessed with the time for self-reflection. Because if I think about like what my mom and what your parents were doing at our ages, and like they were leading households and going to work, like there was no time for them to lay in bed for 5 hours and consider their space in the universe, right? Like, who am I? What am I doing here? What a stupid bitch I am to like sit down and like actually think about it, you know? Because I was talking to my mom about it. She was just like, Eritrea, like, you're a moron. Like, you have so much time to just think about like what you're supposed to be doing with your time here, that you're trying to be so intentional about it that it's stressing you out, that you're like, what, you know what I mean? So we're blessed with that.
But
All
I
that
also
to say,
think it's like most things, it's a blessing and a curse, right? You have that time, but it's painful to you. It gives you anxiety because you feel like you should be filling it with some sort of
well,
productivity.
well, not even that, but I'm trying to find a way to like, there's a lot of thoughts happening in here all the time. And if you listen to this pod, then you probably know that we're all living that experience. We're all having lots of thoughts all the time. So bringing it back to mindfulness, like I had to find what worked for me, and something that my best friend's mom told me a couple years ago. I was doing the 75 hard at the time and I was like doing a workout every single day. And I remember like sitting out talking to her, and she was just like, so like, are you doing like yoga also? And I was like, no, like yoga is so uncomfortable for me. Like it's not, meditation is so hard. Like I just can't like be in my brain by myself like it's so painful. Like I don't know how to explain it, to verbalize it for you guys. And she was like, well, when you're doing your workouts, like I've watched you like doing your jump rope, or like you'll go run and come back. She was like, you are zoned in. Like you are, like you should see your face. Like you are on another plane. You know, you are Aang in Avatar. So like you just have to find the thing that works for you, even if like, right, other things might not be working. So like for me personally, currently, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. And I have it written down. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. And I think about that constantly. I'm cursed with the time to reflect and like constantly think, and that's amazing. So what I found that works for me is I like to run, which is ridiculous. This sounds crazy. But I do. I enjoy it. It's good for me. It's hard. It puts me in a place where I have to like put one foot in front of the other, and I'm just like breathing, which is what people do in meditation and are focused on. I'm
Mm-hmm.
inside my body and inside my brain, and I know that I am safe for the most part if I don't get attacked by a random man. I am safe. I am running. I am doing something that's moving my muscles. I'm burning calories. I am thinking about me instead of thinking about like my crisis of all of the intersectionalities that I exist in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, running is good for you. Yeah.
But also, I find myself, and this is kind of bringing it back to what you said, is like part of taking care of yourself is like also sometimes being a good role model to others. And like, shout out to Sarah at Embecta. I had a really great conversation with her the other night, and she ran a half. She's not a person with diabetes, but she's a mom, and she ran a half marathon this past weekend. And she's never run one before, but we just had this great conversation where she was like, just do it. Like, just go for the runs, and like you have to set up a schedule, and like there'll be long runs and short runs, and like I'd never run 13 miles even while I was training. She only ran the 11, and then like in the last one where she had to do the actual 13, she was like told her family like, be at this spot because that's why I'm gonna need you at the mile 11 for that push. And she's like, and I did it, and I am not, you know, I ran cross country in high school, so it reminded me of me. So find what works for you, and then if you can share that, it could help so many people, even if you're not a person with diabetes, even if you are just a caretaker, even if it's your kid who has diabetes and you're like taking care of yourself, like be that example, because I don't know, some, if you can be, because it could be more impactful than you know.
I also think like finding somebody else to help is a great way to kind of help reinforce like gratitude in your life. And, you know, a lot of people talk about that, right? There was, I saw an ad recently. It was for a foundation, and they were talking about how they run marathons with people who are disabled. So people who have either quadriplegic or, you know, some sort of brain damage or disorder. And they run marathons by people pushing them. And the people who push them are volunteers. And the story is about the connection that they have, where this person, they see this person cross the finish line. They are participating in running these marathons with their partner, and the magic happens between the two people, where they sort of suspend the idea that they're doing it for any other reason than the other person. And I think we just don't have as many Like, in a lot of ways, we're hyper connected to technology and we're more disconnected from each other than ever. But I looked at those moments and like those people who sign up for no gain, monetary, no gain from like an influence or, to feel good about themselves, maybe, but like it's so humble and so for the other person that you're able to kind of expand your mind as to what's possible. And I love the idea, the example of Sarah's marathon. That's very similar to my half marathon experience. Like I didn't run 13 miles in any of my training runs. The Japanese call this principle misogi, where you challenge yourself to some sort of superhuman activity or outside of yourself exertion every year. And it could be running a marathon, it could be climbing a mountain, it could be some sort of, big challenge, because physiologically, when you do that, when you undertake those things, it expands your mind to the idea of what is possible. So again, it's kind of like similar to what we do on this podcast, where we interview people who have done things, doing things, so that somebody listening can expand their mind as to what they're capable of. Because I think the reality is that most of us have no idea what we're capable of. We listen to naysayers, we have our own internal doubts, we have lack of experience, we have lack of time, all very real things. And it causes anxiety. Yeah, fears, it causes anxiety, it causes self-judgment, it causes self-doubt. But when you commit yourself to a task that may be a little bit outlandish, something like a 75 hard, the neuroplasticity that is going on is you realize like, oh, I am capable of running a half marathon. I am capable of meditating. I am capable of logging my blood glucose readings. I am capable of getting in physical shape. And when you do that and you kind of build those compounding habits, you can find yourself in a completely different place than maybe you thought possible. I talk a lot about, and you work closely with Gary Forbes, and we've talked a lot about him, and he's been a recurring guest on the show. If he hadn't have done a really BS press hit with the Denver Post when he was playing for the Nuggets with diabetes, I wouldn't have read it. And I might have taken a different journey at that point in my college basketball career. I might have quit, and I wouldn't have the professional basketball moniker next to my name. I wouldn't have that claim to fame sort of thing that informed what this podcast has become and what a huge part of my life this has been. So you just never know what you're capable of until you maybe can hear it from someone else or take inspiration or try. And so, you talked about, you like to show up and you like to try to continue to do it anyway. Ashley and I have this like old kind of tenet of our friendship is show up, be cool, do that. And for the most part, like you'll find yourself much better than you were otherwise. And you may meet someone that changes your life.
Number one, that's kind of what happened here. I never thought I could do this job. Like I just sent you an email and you were like, she could do it. And you believed in me. Anyways, but also it's so crazy what you just said about you and Ashley, because this is a little bit of an insider and you don't know this about me. And I don't think a lot of people do because who comes to my office? But I have this Post-it note on my computer. It's been here for like 5 years. And it says, no haters, no assholes, no bullshit. Show up for people who show up for you and root for everybody to win. And that's so simpatico with what you just said, which is just show up, be cool. And I would say try your best if you got it in you that day. You know what I mean? And that sometimes your best is not 100. Maybe it's just like 10%. But if it's all you've got, if you're on some kind of team, maybe the other people can contribute some percentage. I know sometimes I've shown up and only given Rob 5%, and he's been like, I've got the 95, and I hope vice versa. So yeah, diabetes community, I feel like we're one big team, even if sometimes we all see different sides.
And not everybody has the same amount of energy or contribution every day, right? I would also recommend for people to read a book that I read shortly after one of my close friends died at the end of 2021, which is called 4,000 Weeks. We've talked about it on the podcast, but it basically shows that life is going to be one set of insoluble problems, one after another. And just because you don't have it all figured out, if you relieve yourself of the burden of figuring it all out, you're going to be much better off in a much better place.
Life is a set of insoluble problems. Good. Rob Howe.
Yeah, good mentality. Have a good mentality. Whatever happens to you, good. Let's adjust it.
Well, I try to think about the universe, even if it's terrible. We are supremely blessed and privileged to be able to say that, right? Because life isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. For the most part, I think when we live in the West, like you have some opportunities, even if we're complaining about the stuff that we, discussed. I don't want to erase the people who are living in an ongoing genocide and terrible situation, because that is not a set of insolvable problems. You know what I mean? Like, that's so
Well, I
beyond
mean, it is.
thinking
It
about.
is. It's for them. It's just it's a different level of problem. It's a
Yeah,
much
it's a
more
different level
dire
of
problem.
unsolvable. Does that make sense? Like, it kind of reminds me that what you said, like, some things are within our control. And I think if you can remind yourself what even the people who are living through that, like, and I'm not just talking about Gaza, I'm talking about Congo, Sudan, the people of the Tigray. Like, there's so many places right now that are going through terrible things. But even they, like, I see the videos on TikTok, and they will try to focus on the things that they are within their control. Like, I've watched people make food videos from a genocide. I've watched people be like day in the life in a genocide. Like, it's wild what some people are doing to cope, because life is an uncomfortable emotional experience, and we're all just finding ways to cope, if that
Well,
makes
I
sense.
think it also shows the indomitable human spirit.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, you're right. We don't have control over the actual governance and governing bodies that are supposed to protect people everywhere from things like this. You think about the Uyghur Muslims in China. You think about Congo. You think about Gaza. You think about Ukraine. These are man-made conflicts that are supposed to have a system where people are held accountable. That was like literally after World War II, what these systems were put in place to try to protect this from happening again. It's not happening. And so then again, you start to lose your faith in humans looking after each other. And you start to wonder, well, aren't all these protocols in place to prevent this type of thing from happening again? Why is it happening at a rapid rate all the time in multiple places? And
And then it's been happening the whole time. We just didn't have outside media feeding us the
right.
information.
And then you start to ask even bigger questions of like, oh, well, who owns the media? And without social media and TikTok, which again they're trying to ban, but then why are they banning it? Is it because the Chinese government owns it, or is that a
Well,
convenient
first of all, that's racist, because the Chinese government.
MacGuffin?
So that's racist. It
That's
is.
not
We have to,
racist.
isn't it?
No, that's not racist. You're wrong. They do own it.
Well, I could be wrong.
The Chinese government owns ByteDance, which is,
Okay.
and that's part the way that the way their government works. They actually have companies that roll into the government, which is just how it is. But the amount of U.S. citizens that use the app is a MacGuffin. Are you familiar with the term MacGuffin?
No, white man, tell me.
It's an ultimate, like a super white person term for sure. It even sounds like nerdy. So it's in a film where, or like a Law and Order episode is a good example, where like some clue will pop up and you think it's important and you follow it, but it really has nothing to do with what's going on. That
It's
is a
like a
MacGuffin.
or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a red herring is another way to talk about it. So this MacGuffin is it really, if again, in the Rob and Eritrea show, you got to put your tinfoil hat on sometimes. But do they want to control who has our data, or is it because they don't want the actual truth from, they don't want people to be able to speak truth to power. They want to be able to control that narrative, because we talked about this on the podcast before, but somebody like me, where my experience is, oh yeah, like I'm in, I hear from the media and I hear from these leaders, and I just accept that I've been told that they're going to tell me the truth, so I just believe it. But then you look at who is sponsoring some of the news, and it's like, okay, well, this cannot be, this can't be real, this can't be right, it's totally biased. And so again, all these things are happening all at once, and for people who are living in this time to feel a sense of overwhelm and dread is so normal. And I think a lot of us are really united in like, I don't want to be, I'm a reasonable person. I'm anti-war. I don't want these things to happen. I don't want these people, I want people to be held accountable. I don't want these bad actors to be able to do whatever they want without any sort of repercussion. I want to believe that people can be protected. And, more and more, you're seeing that that's just not the case. And I think that's where a lot of us are right now in 2024, even in the West, where our problems are nowhere near the magnitude of our brothers and sisters overseas, who have no free speech and are literally living in an apartheid, even prior to the genocide. We're not allowed to go places, and like the amount of people who didn't even know that before that is amazing.
I mean, it's on purpose. It's by design, right? So, like, I guess I'll join you. Let me put my hat on. Because A, did not know that. I thought that, like, the whole China behind banning TikTok was very like McCarthyism, like the whole Red Scare with communism. That's kind of what it was giving, especially when their CEO was like, I'm Singaporean. That's a totally different country. Like, what is wrong with y'all? So I didn't know all that. So thank you for debunking it. Because in my mind, I was
Well,
like, this
he is
is
Singaporean.
racist.
That is true. He is not Chinese.
Yeah.
But and so yeah, and Tom, the whatever the guy, the Tom Cotton guy from Arkansas is a total idiot and another
Yeah.
person that should not be allowed to be represent the U.S. It's anyway, it's a terrible thing. So you're right. Like that's all that people are seeing. That's not they don't have the real information.
It's weird. And maybe really, I don't know. But I've learned so much on TikTok in the last, 4 years that I've been on there. It's kind of scary. Like stuff that I didn't know about or met people or like connected with other people with diabetes. So for it to kind of be going away during an election year, girl, it's giving
You're starting to put the pieces together.
like it's giving scary. It's giving like I don't want you guys to know what I'm like. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, Wizard of Oz. Like, so it's just a little scary. And
And I think
yeah,
that's so. Again, back to make it about the listener. It's normal to feel that way.
yeah.
Other people are feeling that way. What can you do about most of it? Not a lot, unfortunately. I think that also contributes to the dread, and it
You
contributes
can do
to
stuff. You can do stuff. You can share a video on TikTok. There's a trend. There's a few trends right now that as sad and twisty. Back to like yes, thinking about the listener. As dark and twisty as the world is, there are little things within your control that you can do that take minimal effort and can help people if you really want to help them. You can repost a video on TikTok from a fake account without your picture on it. Like just make an account. You can follow a creator that's asking other people to jump on a follow train so that they can get 10,000 followers and they can monetize and pay their retinopathy. I'm talking about me. Go follow me on TikTok, please. So
are you doing the watch
yeah,
this video so I pay
I
my
made
data?
the photo and I was like, I'm just a girl standing in front of the internet asking for 10,000 followers because I make content every day and it'd be really great to be able to monetize it. Like we've been trying to get monetized on YouTube. Rob has been pushing that mission for like 2 years. Like
I'm like
we're all
150 hours away.
please go follow our YouTube or go watch YouTube on repeat in the background. So it's like if it brings me back to what my point was that like a mutual aid as a society is so real. And also societal justice within social media is also so real because essentially what I'm seeing is a form of our age group and below's resistance and being like, yeah, I can't buy a house, but I can make a TikTok account and I can follow people and I can try to pay my bills. And I can't, my college loans are not going to be, erased the way Joe Biden said he was going to do that. But I can sell product from my house, books, whatever to try to. So I see like what you said, which is, what was it? The indomitable human spirit, which is like us as a community still trying. I see so much of that happening on the internet right now. And it gives me hope. Like, I don't, it's not everything is about Gaza, but like I see people canceling creators and being like,
Yeah, blocking celebrities. Mhm.
block party 2024, I'm in this bitch. Everybody on my shit is blocked. Kim Kardashian, bye. Skims, no longer. McDonald's, see you later. Starbucks lost money this year because nobody's buying their shit no more. Like, don't piss off Arabs if you want to sell coffee. Sorry. We like coffee. So I see society coming together as a group, and that gives me a person living in the diaspora from a colonized land hope. So yeah, we
Well
can
said.
do.
I want to get back to kind of focus a little bit on, you were talking about your being a creator.
Yeah.
So as we kind of close the episode, I want to talk about you have something to share with me so you're on a creator journey. Like you said, you're working to monetize your content and working to work on deals. And that's part of, how you are growing as a creator and also,
Mhm.
working to try to, improve your life and station and things like that. So you had an interaction because we typically in volunteering and especially in community advocacy in diabetes specifically, you will be asked to volunteer and make sure, I would say, like as someone who has logged a lot of hours volunteering, and I know that will come back to me at some point. I'm doing it for others. I'm not doing it for me. So make sure that when you know what you're getting into when you are choosing to labor with nothing in return, like no payment. Because then
So
it gets, because you get into this weird gray area, and I promise I'm working my way around. I know I'll be talking, but I'm working my way through this.
no.
So when you are a creator, and especially a small creator first starting out, you will sort of get these quote unquote opportunities. You guys can see on the YouTube, I'm doing the air quotes. You will get opportunities that come your way to work with brands or with, brand adjacent or events to create content and do what you want and do what you love, but you're not going to get anything in return. And you'll often be promoted exposure or something similar, maybe an in-kind gift. You'll see people like send product or whatever, and like those are a little bit more in that gray area as well. But one thing I would encourage you to do is ask yourself if making money off of your content or whatever you're doing is important to you. Ask yourself, do I feel comfortable being in this position where everyone here is making money and getting paid to be here? And if the answer is no, then you need to advocate for yourself. So what you're going to share with us is a situation that you recently got in, and we're going to talk through it.
Oh, we're gonna spill the tea. We're gonna spill so much tea. Are you ready? Are y'all buckled in? Get you a snack, girl, because it's about to be juicy. So before we start, I want to say that today is very, I don't know, we're having a lot of Asian conversation. Like we talked about the other book that you recommended, and we talked about China and stuff. So maybe whatever. But my point is, for me, being a person living with diabetes who works in the diabetes space, like I read a book, I still have it, called Ikigai, which is like the Japanese concept of like to live. Like ikigai means to live and gai means reason, so it's like a reason to live, and it's a broad concept that like refers to a passion that gives joy and value to life. And as I've talked about on this podcast many times, my goal for my career as a person living with diabetes working in the space is to help Black and brown people have access to resources and then be available to them. That's my ultimate goal and mission. That's what I love to do. That's what I care about. Everyone knows that, right? So when a brand approaches me and asks me to do labor, I weigh multiple things. How big is this brand? How large is this exposure? Will it actually help people? Well, does it serve the mission that I'm on, which is like helping people who look like me with diabetes? And also, what can they actually afford? Because everything is a business. And I learned this in like my entire life, is that even like existing, people are making money from me being alive. The moment I took a first breath of air and they gave me a social security number, we're making money. So with that being said, I approach every situation based off of like who I'm talking to. And I'm very respectful for the most part. But if you piss me off, as everybody knows, I'm gonna unload the clip. I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna let this bitch sing. Like, so I got an email. I'm not gonna say from who, but I got an email from a company that wanted to reach out to me to invite me to share my story on their platforms, which are platforms I have never heard of before, to be completely honest with you. And I responded. First of all, I took time for my lunch break. So I had a lot of meetings that day, which is why I was mad. I took time on my lunch break as I'm like eating my salad, like typing up an email while I'm not being paid, right? Because I'm on my lunch break. And I responded to her email and was like, hey, first of all, you reached out to me on my work email address, like where you know that I do this for a living. Let's move communications to the right email address, which is on my social media. So why you're using this one, I don't know. But here's the right email address, and like let's move this conversation forward. And so they're like, yeah, we'd like to invite you to like share your story. And like essentially like the platform shares the stories of heroes. It's a 20-minute video, whatever. It's an unpaid collaboration is what they explained to me. Because I was like, what is the budget for this, right? So when a brand tells me that they have no budget, I go and I look up how much the brand is worth. Because stop playing with me. If you're a nonprofit, that's something we can talk about, because I work at a nonprofit. I care about nonprofits. My life has been positively impacted by nonprofits, not so much from LLCs. But anyways, this is the email that I sent to them that was my response to their unpaid thing. Hello, team. Thank you for following up with me. Unfortunately, I would be unable to sign on to a project that provides no compensation for me to do emotional labor. As a Black woman, a creator, and a person living with diabetes and diabetes complications, I do my best to further my ultimate career mission to help Black, Indigenous people of color living with diabetes be represented properly while having access to resources. That includes being compensated fairly. I can appreciate that not all compensation is financial, but even nonprofits have offered me something for my work, as it is work. Being that your company is worth around $3 million, it's interesting to me that none of that is allocated to compensate creators. Please let me know if anything changes and if you'd like to revisit this. Best, Eritrea, which
Best.
is essentially fuck off. So my question to the listeners, because I'd love to hear from you guys, and to Rob, is am I the asshole for TLDR telling a company that asking me to do emotional labor for them for free when this is literally my job, my work, and how I pay my bills?
No, I don't think so. I think you actually even maybe did probably over explained. I think it could be as simple as, either no response or say, hey, I can't do it unless there's compensation. I like that you explained the why. I think you gave them something to think about. But I think, the point is, and I see this a lot specifically from Black creators, and I've kind of filtered some of my feeds on different social channels to make sure that I am seeing these conversations, because my experience is not universal. And I want to make sure that, like, if I'm speaking on behalf of content creators, I'm like including perspectives outside of my own. And I see this a lot with Black and brown creators, specifically women creators, who get either told one thing or have weird terms in their contract, like view requirements, like things
Yep.
that aren't best practices or aren't universal kind of across engagements. But what I would tell you is that what you're experiencing, or what you've explained and experienced, is the norm. Like, a lot of these
Yeah.
companies don't think about, and they're still early on, the talent needs to be compensated, which, in a commercial, everybody, whether you talk in the commercial or not, is compensated for their image and likeness, for NIL, name, image, likeness. You're using
That's what
me
I'm
to promote a product or service, or even as part of a campaign or as a nonprofit. Like, you're using this, someone's paying for it, I should be part of that. And, not all the time is it going to be money that is going to, pay off your house or pay off your college debt or tuition or whatever.
It
But,
might buy me groceries. It might pay my
100,
phone bill. It might
yeah,
help me.
$100, $200 might get your insulin for the month. Those types of
I was
things
gonna
are
say it might
important.
help me pay for the retina treatment you want me to talk about for free. Like I just
Well,
don't
let
do
me, before, because I don't want to like make you do too much labor either. If
yeah.
you're working for yourself, you need to imagine yourself as a shop with a door, with a storefront. And if someone walked in and asked you to pick something off of your shelf and walked up to your register and said, I need this for free, you would say no. Or it's like, hey, sorry, I can't. If am I making a donation? What's the cause? Like these types of things. And we need to think about ourselves in this way when these brands or these agencies or PR companies or tech platforms are reaching out for you to recruit you for doing something outside of your wheelhouse, or like, that's taking you away from what you do, and there is no sort of reciprocal relationship. You need to consider yourself like a store. Would you let somebody walk out of your store with that item? And if the
I don't
answer
even
is
think about it
no,
as
it can
a
be
store.
as
I
simple
think
as
about
no.
what you told me. I told I again so blessed. Like I have a mentor, right? So I have a person that I can ask and be like, hey, what do you think? Does this look crazy to you? And he'll be like, yeah, that's no. But this time I didn't need to do that because we've had these conversations before. And once you told me, you're like, if you say yes to something, you're saying no to your own time, like your own stuff, because I know that you are a chronically saying yes man, a recovering man who said yes a lot.
I
So
was
it's like,
chronically available.
yeah, chronically available. Yeah, to the point where like honestly, and even in other situations this week where people have tried to waste my time, has made me better at my job because essentially I will not allow you to waste my fucking time because it's valuable. I could be spending this time working on my article for Diatribe, working on the pod with you, going for a walk with my mom, having dinner, taking a nap, taking a shower, going for a run. I could be doing something else to prioritize taking care of myself. And instead, you want me to do work for free. I have done work for free. I will still do work for free if it's worth it for that company and I think it's going to advance my mission. But if it's advancing my mission and fucking me over, no thanks. Like
Right. At what cost? Right.
at what cost? I don't know. I saw so last night I didn't sleep very well. We were talking about this earlier and I was going through all of my like TikTok videos from 2019 until now and I I made this is gonna have the F word. I've said the F word a lot in this episode. Maybe we'll have to bleep them. But there's this audio that I did that was Cartman. It's basically shout out South Park. It's like I like to be wine and dined before I get fucked. Like, I was just like, dude, like, because that's how I felt when this company who's worth millions and little old single income me is trying to just afford her monthly bills. Like, and you're being like, you have enough, little girl. It's just like, get out of my face. And maybe I did over explain myself, but I hope that if you email another creator, you learned your lesson with me, maybe trial by fire, and you offer her at least $100 for emailing you back, like for talking to you, because it's the bare minimum. Like,
Yeah, and I agree. And I want to finish. I want to close with two things because
sure.
I think, and they're both Tim Ferriss isms, or that's how I learned them. One I saw today, which I think is really interesting. That I saw it today leading into this conversation because I had no idea that it was going to be relevant. But you never know if you pick up things on the way; they could be useful. So the thing I learned today is it's never been easier to be a creator, and it's never been harder to stand out. So because anybody can be a creator, it's never been harder for your work to stand out. So I think that's a challenge. It's an opportunity, but it's very much like, so when you're in these situations where an opportunity comes your way, because it's so hard to stand out and get opportunities, you may feel like you have to do something. And I think that ask yourself, do you really have to? And if and really want to, which gets to my next thing, which is a framework that's very simple. It doesn't work all the time for everyone, but it's a good one to remember, which is if it ain't hell yes, it's no. Because they're going to be, I think, where you really get the freedom that you're talking about to be able to make your choices, and that autonomy that you're looking for is that when you say no to good opportunities, because good opportunities are going to come up for you throughout your career, throughout your personal life, and your real growth opportunity is when you see a good opportunity come up, but it's not a great opportunity. And you say, you know what, I'm going to pass on this because I'm focused on either what I'm working on right now or I'm leaving room for the great opportunity down the road. And those, I will tell you, are the hardest things to do. But we can do hard things if we practice and we get better at them over time.
Good plane landing. I appreciated that. Also, what a benchmark for the show to like have started here doing free opportunities, and now 3.5, 4 years later, to be blessed to be able to be like, no, I will not do that. Thank you. Goodbye.
Well, everybody's on a different plane. I love being a volunteer. Volunteering gives me more than the work I actually output for people at times. But showing up for somebody for no benefit of your own is definitely worthwhile, and that could change your life. It's not the same to do free content for a brand. That's just not.
Also,
That's
for
not,
them to
that's not
own you.
volunteering.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not. So, and we can close it on this, but I used to do stock photography. So some of you guys know this, some of you don't. But
My
I have a
favorite
friend.
photos where you're like,
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I hate you. Anyways, there's a lot of there's a lot of pictures of me on the internet that exist that brands use. The CDC has used my face before. Like, the United States government has used my face before for a camp.
they were like,
They
have you
are
seen this woman? She's under arrest.
no, like they use it for like some COVID thing, and I was
Mm.
just like, okay, like I don't make any money from those photos. I did them for my friend because she is my friend. I love her. I still talk to her all the time. Courtney, shout out to you. I hope your business taking off. She's a woman who owns her own stock photography company. That is hard to do. I don't mind. And also, I had a mission at the time, which was, maybe you remember, but it was to be the secret face of diabetes. And now I work at places that buy my stock photography, pay my friend for those photos, and I work there. Like, that is cool to me that I secretly did that. It was worth it for me to do it for free because that was my mission. And
And you
now
were
she
helping
gets
your
to make,
friend.
and she's my friend, and now she gets to make money and pay her bills and live her life, and I love her. So I'm willing to do it. You know what I mean? But I won't just do it because you're asking me, and you're also not asking me very nicely. So, like, don't purport to have all this clout when I've never even heard of you. So read the room, brands who listen to our pod, and for creators, like, not to quote Donald, Mr. Trump, I wish I could do the impression you do, but you gotta be willing to lose the deal to make the deal. It's a Donald Trump quote. When I say that to you, that's who I'm quoting. But it's very real. And I've had experiences, and we've talked about it in earlier episodes of this show this year, where I later went on to work with the brand because they were willing to work with me. And when I told them that this wasn't fair, they were like, we see you and we recognize that. And we understand that $200 for 8 hours a day is ridiculous. let me go talk to somebody and see what we can do. And then they came back and were like, this is what we can do. Can you meet us here? And I was like, just you trying is, let's fucking do it. Let's fucking do it. So you get more flies with honey than vinegar, said Edna Mussa from the south of Mexico.
I wish that had caught on.
Yeah, you get more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. But yeah, I don't know. We're all just icky-guying our way through life, I guess.
I love the wordplay of ikigai, because it's like, it sounds like a Gen Z like TikTok term for like a toxic male, an ikigai. But I was laughing to myself about that.
Ikigai.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. This episode was produced by Eritrea Mussa and edited and published by Ashley Bright and Laura Kowalczyk. We'll see you guys next time.